We of the Galactic Armies have cataloged more than 300 sentient species, and in nearly every case, the story repeats itself. Primitive bipeds bristle with pride, raise their sticks, perhaps throw some rocks, and then collapse into obedience once they recognize the futility of opposing us. It is a cycle as old as conquest itself. And so, when the directive came to evaluate a minor blue planet at the rim of a spiral arm, I accepted without hesitation. Earth, they called it, a backwater sphere radiating signals of such absurd triviality that my colleagues fought to avoid the assignment. I welcomed it, a chance to prove efficiency without effort, to expand our dominion by trampling creatures too distracted by their own chaos to resist. Our intelligence scans painted a portrait of comedy rather than threat. Their transmissions were littered with competitions where participants screamed lyrics into devices, ate grotesque portions of processed meat on camera, or argued over sports involving inflated balls. I once believed their most advanced technology was the production of reality television, a concept so numbing that I briefly suspected it was designed as a psychological weapon. But no, it was voluntary entertainment. Their addiction to such spectacles confirmed their weakness. And yet, scattered among this static were hints of genuine advancement. Rockets, satellites, nuclear fission. Like a child playing with blades, they stumbled toward danger without understanding its edge. Our assignment was straightforward. Retrieve one of them, conduct examinations, confirm the obvious, and return with proof of their inferiority. The Galactic Armies would then proceed as always, strike swiftly, subjugate efficiently, and move on. I descended with my unit under the cover of night, our vessel cloaked against their primitive sensors. The atmosphere parted easily, clouds whispering away from our hull. Below lay endless forests ablaze with autumn color, rivers coiling silver beneath the moonlight. Picturesque, though irrelevant. Beauty means nothing when it is temporary. Our scanners located an isolated figure near the water's edge. A human male, seated beside a small fire, his gear arranged neatly in a semicircle around him. He wore earth-colored fabrics that blended with the trees, though such camouflage seemed pointless when his little flame betrayed him to the heavens. His posture was calm, almost lazy, as though the wilderness itself deferred to him. My soldiers scoffed. This was their warrior? A solitary camper in the woods? I authorized the extraction with an air of boredom. The paralysis beam struck without resistance. He did not cry out, did not even stiffen. His eyes closed gently, as though accepting sleep. I felt a flicker of disappointment. Where was the terror, the desperation? Other species wailed and cursed when the field wrapped them. This one looked serene. My report would note compliance, perhaps even docility. A trivial entry in our archives. We lifted him into the vessel with ease. His possessions were laughably crude. A blade fashioned from metal, rope coiled neatly, a weathered rifle, tins of food sealed in bright packaging. My soldiers ridiculed the items. One discovered a packet labeled microwave burrito and asked if it was a weapon. I explained, with academic scorn, that humans willingly consume such things. The soldier recoiled as though I had described poison. I allowed myself a chuckle. This is what they fuel their bodies with, I remarked. No wonder they remain primitive. As the ship rose toward orbit, I studied him more closely. He appeared to be in his mid-30s by their biological markers. His face bore lines not of age, but of exposure, the kind etched by sunlight and weather. Scars traced faint patterns along his skin, evidence of past encounters with violence or accident. His hands were rough, calloused, shaped by labor or weapons. Yet despite these marks, he rested peacefully, as though the beam were merely a blanket. This lack of resistance unsettled me more than I cared to admit. My soldiers grew careless. They poked through his belongings, mocking the faded fabric of his garments, speculating about his origins. Some joked about keeping him as a pet for the barracks. Their laughter irritated me. Discipline was slipping. Still, I allowed it. After all, what harm could a single paralyzed human pose? In the examination chamber, we secured him beneath the glow of containment. The field pulsed steadily, flawless in its hold. My scientists prepared the neural scanners, aligning instruments with routine precision. I dictated to the recorder with satisfaction. Specimen captured. Human male. Displays no resistance. Subject classification. Docile. I lingered on that word. Docile. It would look clean in the report, an efficient summation of the mission success. The ship settled into silent orbit. Through the viewport, Earth diminished, clouds sliding across oceans like careless brushstrokes. A fragile world, dependent on combustion engines and chemical snacks. Their greatest innovations seemed to be emojis, tiny faces to replace words, and something called hashtags, whose purpose still eludes me. I concluded my initial entry with disdain. This planet will fall swiftly. Returning to the chamber, I inspected the subject once more. He remained motionless, chest rising in steady rhythm, lips pressed into a faint line. My soldiers ignored him now, absorbed in their chatter. Yet something about his stillness gnawed at me. Most captives twitch, their bodies rebelling against paralysis. This one was unervingly composed, like a predator conserving strength. I dismissed the thought. It was absurd to ascribe strategy to him. Still, I could not ignore the faint impression that he was waiting. I moved to leave, already composing my triumphant summary in my head, when his eyes opened. Slowly, deliberately, as though he had chosen the moment with care. The soldiers gasped. Paralysis does not allow such movements. And yet his gaze lifted, sharp and unblinking, locking directly onto mine. For the first time, I faltered. I should have barked an order, confirmed containment, reminded everyone of procedure. Instead, I stood frozen, pinned by his stare. It was not the gaze of prey. It was the gaze of something that recognized me, measured me, and found me predictable. Then, impossibly, his mouth curved, just slightly, enough to show that he understood something we did not. A smile. And in that smile, I felt the first tremor of doubt. His smile lingered in the glow of the paralysis field, small yet unnerving. My soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, their laughter dissolving into silence. I reminded them that premature awakenings sometimes occurred, electrical misalignments, cellular anomalies, nothing more. Protocol demanded composure. Yet as I stepped closer, his eyes followed me, deliberate and sharp. It was not the dazed confusion of a creature dragged from its den. It was assessment. Containment remains active, I announced, more to reassure myself and my squad. The field's readings pulsed steadily. Muscular contractions were impossible, yet I felt as though he could move if he wished. My appendages twitched, and I forced him still. He was just a human, I reminded myself. A biped who stored food in cylindrical cans and worshipped glowing screens. Nothing more. Then he spoke. His voice was low, calm, threaded with a dry amusement. "Nice ship," he said. "Could use better ventilation." The words carried no tremor of fear. My soldiers recoiled as though he had cursed. Paralysis suppresses vocal cords, yet here he was, conversing. Impossible, and yet undeniably real. I attempted to reclaim authority. "Silence. You are under containment." My voice rang hollow against the chamber walls. The human smile widened a fraction. He tilted his head within the beam, eyes narrowing in a gesture I later learned signaled mischief. "You're the leader," he said, gaze fixed on me. "The one in charge. You, over there, your security. And you," his eyes shifted toward my technician, science type. "Nervous with your hands." "That about right." My technician stammered, his digits fumbling over instruments. No report had prepared us for this. No primitive should identify command roles so effortlessly. I masked my unease. "You are guessing," I insisted. But the certainty in his tone lingered. He ignored me, continuing his dissection. Funny thing about abductions. Usually the subject screams, begs, maybe faints. Me? I like to observe. Been awake since you pulled me off the riverbank. Nice descent profile. By the way, smooth burn, a little resonance leakage at the stern. You should fix that. His words dripped casual, conversational. Yet each syllable revealed knowledge no human should possess. My soldiers shifted, the chamber suddenly suffocating. I barked at them to maintain discipline, though my own pulse betrayed me. You lie. You could not have remained conscious during transit. He met my gaze without blinking. Guess you'll have to take my word for it. Then he chuckled softly. Don't worry. I've had worse rides. Ever flown coach? The term meant nothing to us, yet the derision in his tone was clear. I sought to reassert the hierarchy. You're understudy. You will answer when asked, not before. Sure, he said, still smiling. Ask away. He sounded like a teacher indulging a child. The reversal stung. I probe him with questions, standard protocol. Name, age, occupation. He answered with ease, though never directly. When asked his profession, he paused, then replied, I've done a little of everything. Hunting, watching, waiting. I suppose you could say I'm insecurity. His tone suggested layers beneath the word, but he offered no clarification. Instead, he glanced at the ceiling and added, Nice camera placement, by the way. Wide angle, low distortion. Except the one behind you. It's smudged. Might want to clean it. He had not once turned his head toward the lens, yet he described it perfectly. A chill settled over the chamber. My soldiers whispered nervously. I silenced them, but inside I felt the same unease. How could he sense the unseen? He spoke again, softer now, as if confiding. You think I'm afraid? That's your mistake. Fear burns too much energy. I prefer patience. His eyes lingered on me, sharp as glass. You're not the first to underestimate me. Won't be the last. I bristled. You are nothing more than a specimen. A fragment of a doomed species. The words rang with authority, but they tasted of desperation. He only laughed. A quiet, steady sound, as if he had heard this before. You know, he said, back home we have this running joke about someone called Florida Man. He does the impossible, fights alligators, wrestles hurricanes, bathes with fireworks. You'd think he was fiction, but the joke is he's real, and he's everywhere. His smile grew. You thought Florida Man was an isolated case. He is not. My technician frowned, whispering into my receiver. What is Florida Man? I silenced him sharply. Still, the phrase gnawed at me. His words seemed nonsensical, yet carried a weight I could not dismiss. I redirected to testing protocols, commanding my crew to initiate neural scans. The beam activated, bathing his skull in violet light. Patterns formed across the monitors. And then, distortion, unfamiliar surges, peaks beyond expectation. My scientist muttered nervously, his neural pathways are irregular, more active than baseline. I demanded clarity. The readings spiked again, then stabilized at levels comparable not to primitives, but to advanced strategists within our own fleet. Impossible. The human chuckled, as though amused by our confusion. Neat little toy you've got there. Reads a brain, right? Don't suppose it works both ways. His eyes flicked to the monitor, then back to me. Because if it does, you should know I've already mapped your power cycles. A bead of cold sweat, if such a metaphor applies to my kind, slid through me. My soldier stiffened. He cannot, I said firmly, though the conviction in my voice faltered. Our systems are beyond his comprehension. He leaned slightly within the paralysis field, eyes narrowing. You sure about that? For the first time, I found no words. Silence pressed heavy in the chamber. The human let it stretch before speaking again, softer, almost conspiratorial. You asked my occupation. Truth is, I used to serve. Spent years in places most of my own kind don't even admit exist. We learned to study the unseen, to wait, to act only when the enemy blinked. You call it primitive. We call it patience. Some call it being a sniper. The word was unfamiliar, but its weight was undeniable. My soldiers exchanged fearful glances. I struggled to maintain composure, but my appendages betrayed the tremor of unease. Still, I clung to authority. You are paralyzed. You can do nothing. He smiled again. This time the smile was thinner, sharper. Maybe, but I already did what I needed to. His gaze drifted toward the ceiling, almost absent. Messages sent. The words echoed in the chamber, simple yet catastrophic. My soldiers erupted in panic, demanding clarification. I shouted for silence, though my own voice cracked. What message? To whom? He closed his eyes, expression serene, to whoever's listening, and then he laughed softly, as though the joke was ours, not his. The chamber thickened with unease after his words, as though the air itself had grown heavier. A message sent, ridiculous, surely. The paralysis field was intact, our comms encrypted, our systems isolated from primitive interference. Yet his calm certainty gnawed at me like acid against steel. My soldiers looked to me for reassurance, their eyes wide, appendages trembling. I forced my posture tall, my voice steady, though every syllable weighed more than it should. He lies. It is a tactic of intimidation, nothing more. Humans are storytellers. They invent myths to make themselves feel larger than they are. But even as I spoke, the monitors glowed with strange patterns, his neural activity spiking into regions no baseline human brain should ever touch. My scientists tried to adjust calibrations, mumbling excuses about interference, but I could read the fear on his face. The human opened one eye, glanced lazily at the display, and said, "Careful with that dial. Last time someone turned it too far, you fried the whole unit." My scientist recoiled, hand frozen mid-motion. The human smirked. "Relax. Just kidding." Mostly. The arrogance in his tone stung me, and yet beneath it lay something worse. Knowledge. He spoke not as the prey of an interstellar predator, but as a man who had already walked these halls in his mind. My instincts screamed that we were being studied, dissected, even as we believed ourselves to be the disassemblers. It was intolerable. I stepped closer to him, narrowing my gaze. "You will answer directly. How could you possibly interfere with our systems? You have no access, no interface." He smiled again, maddeningly calm. "Interfaces are funny things. You think of them as machines. I think of them as patterns. All it takes is time to watch how they repeat." He tilted his head slightly, eyes still locked on mine. "And I've had plenty of time." I scoffed, though the sound came brittle. "You exaggerate your own cleverness." He shrugged within the paralysis beam. "That's what they said about duct tape too, until it fixed everything. Spaceships, engines, marriages. You name it." My soldiers exchanged confused glances, whispering the unfamiliar word. I waved them silent, yet I could not ignore the way his humor unsettled them. They expected terror, pleas, perhaps anger. Instead, they were confronted by a man who laughed while bound. His calm eroded our authority more swiftly than resistance ever could. He opened both eyes now, staring into the ceiling as though gazing beyond the metal shell of our ship. "You want to know the funny part? You think I'm exceptional. That's your mistake. I'm not. There are thousands like me. Millions, if you count the ones who don't even carry rifles. Teachers, engineers, kids who grew up learning to spot patterns in video games or solve problems on the fly because the world never gave them stability. You studied our broadcasts, right? Then you know we thrive in chaos. We make memes out of disaster. We laugh at fear." He chuckled, shaking his head slightly. "Florida Man is just the tip of the iceberg." My crew looked at one another nervously, baffled by his ramblings, but I understood the underlying warning. He claimed not to be singular, but representative. If true, our intelligence had been catastrophically flawed. Earth was not populated by docile primitives, but by latent predators masked in banality. I forced the thought aside. "You are attempting psychological manipulation. Your words mean nothing." He tilted his head back toward me, his expression suddenly devoid of humor. "If they mean nothing, why are you sweating?" My throat tightened, though my physiology does not sweat as his kind does. Still, the implication burned. He was watching not only our systems, but us, observing, cataloging, exploiting the smallest tremors in voice and stance. He was reversing the experiment. I ordered my scientists to increase scan intensity. The beam flared brighter, shadows stretching across the walls. Data poured in, neural lattices branching with abnormal density, cortical responses firing as though rehearsed for this very moment. My scientist's voice quivered. He processes faster than baseline by orders we cannot quantify. I snarled for him to continue, but the truth was already plain. The human's mind was not merely surviving the scan. It was using it. He chuckled again, a low sound that curdled the air. Feels like a tickle. Funny thing, you use beams to read the brain. But a brain isn't just passive, is it? Sometimes it reads back. His eyes glimmered in the violet light. And now I know where you keep the keys. Panic fluttered in my chest. I barked at my soldiers to ready restraints, though he was already restrained. The contradiction tasted of desperation. He smirked knowingly. You feel it, don't you? The loss of control, the quiet slipping. He paused, then added almost kindly, don't take it personally. Everyone underestimates the quiet ones. I demanded answers. Who are you? What training produced this? What organization? He considered, then said with deliberate casualness. Once upon a time, they called me military. These days I just test things. Systems, defenses, people. I find cracks. His eyes sharpened, voice dropping. And you, friend, are full of cracks. The chamber pulsed with silence, my soldiers staring as though he had already escaped. My authority drained by the second. I tried again to anchor us. You cannot act. You cannot move. He leaned into the words, smiling thinly. I don't need to move. I only need to think. His gaze flicked to the flickering lights above. And I've been thinking a lot. Almost as if in response, the overhead lamps dimmed, then flared, then dimmed again. My soldiers gasped. Systems rarely falter on our vessels. To falter now, at this moment, was unthinkable. I barked orders for diagnostics. Panels scrambled with static, cleared, then scrambled again. My crew moved frantically. The human merely closed his eyes, serene. See? Told you. Message sent. I felt my composure splinter. My voice cracked despite my effort to steady it. What message? To what end? He opened his eyes slowly, locking on mine with chilling calm. To let them know you're here. That's all it takes. He paused, then added softly, and to let you know you're not as invisible as you think. The chamber's hum grew uneven, consoles flickering, as though the ship itself trembled beneath his gaze. I turned to my crew, demanding restoration, demanding order, yet their faces betrayed the same fear gnawing at me. We had taken a man to dissect. Instead, he had dissected us. And as the lights guttered again, I realized the central conflict was no longer between empire and primitive. It was between arrogance and patience, between hunters and the one we mistook for prey. The lights faltered again, dipping the chamber in a shadow before flaring back with sterile brilliance. My soldiers scrambled across consoles, their voices sharp, overlapping, panicked. None dared look at me for guidance anymore. Their eyes betrayed the same question echoing in my own mind. How? How had one human, bound and paralyzed, turned the heart of our vessel into trembling chaos? The human did not flinch. He lay calmly within the field, as though reclining on a couch at home, unbothered by the storm he had unleashed. His voice, quiet but steady, sliced through the rising panic. Funny thing about systems. You think they're built to control. But every system has a flaw. Every lock has a weak hinge. All I needed was your scanner to show me where to push. My scientist muttered frantically, recalibrating instruments, but his words were broken fragments. Feedback loop, resonance inversion, not possible. He collapsed into silence when the human chuckled softly. Not only possible, he said, but inevitable. You gave me the map. I just followed it. I slammed my palm against the console, demanding restoration, but the displays bled into static. Doors hissed and sealed on their own. A klaxon wailed briefly, then died. The ship was no longer ours. It pulsed with a new rhythm, one that seemed to answer to him. I rounded on him, my authority eroding into fury. You dare to sabotage a warship of the Galactic Armies? You consign yourself and your entire species to annihilation. His eyes opened, glinting like steel beneath the flickering lamps. You think this is about me? That's your mistake. I'm just a messenger. Messenger. The word struck harder than a weapon. My soldiers froze, the chamber echoing with its weight. He continued, voice patient, steady, surgical. You saw weakness where there was deception. You thought Earth was blind, but we were watching. Always watching. Satellites cloaked in orbit, listening to the stars. Monitors buried deep underground, scanning the void. You thought we were asleep while you circled above. But sleep is just another form of waiting. I felt my throat constrict. No intelligence report had mentioned such defenses. No analyst had suggested this level of subterfuge. And yet, as he spoke, his words carried the unshakable cadence of truth. He tilted his head, that infuriating half-smile returning. You ever hear of Chuck Norris? Silence. None of us dared respond. He nodded as though satisfied. Good. Keep it that way. The name hung in the air, a meaningless syllable to us, yet weighted with menace by his delivery. My soldiers whispered uneasily. He leaned back slightly, voice now almost conversational. Earth has a habit of hiding strength in plain sight. Farmers who used to be soldiers. Engineers who design games that are really training exercises. Kids who build drones out of scrap. You call us primitive because you don't understand how improvisation works. His smile sharpened. You ever seen what we can do with duct tape? One of my soldiers whimpered. I silenced him with a glare, but the seed had been planted. This human was not merely explaining himself. He was weaving a mythology of resilience, of cunning. And worse, I could feel myself believing it. The ship shuddered suddenly, a deep groan reverberating through the hull. Consoles flickered out completely, leaving us in semi-darkness. Emergency power thrummed weakly. My scientist shouted. Central core unresponsive. Panic spread like infection. The human spoke above the din, calm as ever. I told you. Message sent. Your presence isn't a secret anymore. Earth knows, and Earth doesn't forgive trespassers. I staggered closer, fury masking the fear clawing at my insides. You lie. Earth cannot repel us. We command fleets, weapons, armies beyond comprehension. His eyes locked onto mine, cold and unyielding. Armies don't matter if you never see the bullet. He let the silence hang, heavy and suffocating. Then he whispered, and I'm a sniper. The word cut deeper this time. Not just a profession, but a philosophy. Invisible until decisive. Patient until lethal. I realized then that his calm was not arrogance, but discipline. We had mistaken stillness for weakness, silence for submission. In truth, he had been aiming since the moment we took him. Alarms shrieked briefly, then died again. My soldiers huddled at their stations, useless. The ship felt like a tomb. I turned back to him, desperate for control, for logic, for anything to reassert order. What do you want? Speak plainly. His expression softened, almost pitying. It's not about what I want. It's about what you need to understand. You came here thinking we were prey. But predators don't announce themselves. They wait. They learn. And when the time comes, they act without warning. The chamber fell into silence. My own breath rasped in my ears. His words echoed, not just in the air, but in the crumbling edifice of my certainty. We had cataloged countless species, crushed resistance across galaxies, yet never had one man, unarmed and immobile, dismantled us with nothing but words and patience. He closed his eyes as though bored now, finished. You should go home. Tell your armies what you saw. If they're smart, they'll stay away. If they're not, well, you'll find out the hard way. The paralysis field shimmered uncertainly around him, destabilized by the ship's failing power. My soldiers whispered fearfully, asking if he would break free. I could not answer. My voice, once confident, now trembled with the admission clawing its way up my throat. We underestimated you. His eyes opened one last time, sharp as a rifle scope, cutting through every illusion I clung to. Everyone does. The ship groaned again, systems collapsing one by one. In the darkness that followed, only his calm breathing remained. And in that sound, I heard the death knell of certainty, the shattering of arrogance, the truth of what we had awakened. We came to break a species. Instead, we discovered one that had been waiting, patient as a sniper in tall grass, waiting for us to step into its sights.